Imagine being a 12-year-old boy in the year 34 AD, swimming in the clear waters of the Bay of Naples. The sun is warm on your back as you dive again and again, trying to stay underwater longer than your little brother. Your father watches from his boat, smiling as you surface with a handful of seashells. Life is simple, filled with family, fun, and the sea. Then you spot them, 3 large Roman ships approaching with purple sails marked by golden eagles. Your father's face turns pale. Everyone in your village knows what those ships mean. Emperor Tiberius is calling again. What you don't realize is that your swimming skills have drawn unwanted attention. For weeks, soldiers have quietly watched you, taking note of your breath control and how naturally you move in the water. By the next morning, you'll wake up far from home, in a stone room on an island you've never seen, surrounded by other boys who were also taken. Your talent in the water, once a source of joy, is now being used against you. That evening will mark the end of the life you knew. The boy who dove for seashells will begin to vanish, replaced by something else, what the emperor's staff calls a little fish. From now on, your role will serve a purpose so disturbing that it would horrify even the gods of Rome. You're headed to Capri, where the emperor lives in private luxury, and what happens it will stay with you for the rest of your life. But this is only the beginning. Tiberius Julius Caesar Augustus didn't start out as someone feared. When he became emperor in 14 AD, many Romans thought he would bring wisdom and peace. He was experienced, well-educated, and loyal, but power can change a person. By 30 AD, something had shifted inside him, deeply and dangerously. Tiberius eventually left Rome completely, choosing to live full-time on the island of Capri. On the surface, it was said he needed rest and recovery, but in truth, this marked the beginning of something darker. On Capri, hidden from public view, Tiberius created a system of cruelty behind grand stone walls and stunning sea views. The island geography made it ideal for isolation. About 12 miles from the mainland, surrounded by rough waters and cliffs, escape was almost impossible. Access was tightly controlled. Ships only came when weather allowed, and every approach was closely watched. Whatever happened on Capri never left it. Tiberius's villa was built atop the island, a sprawling estate with gardens, hallways, and private pools carved into solid rock. These weren't ordinary baths. They were advanced constructions, carefully designed to support specific, secret activities. The pools varied in size and depth, with some meant for standing, others for long periods underwater. Some were linked by hidden underwater tunnels to muffle sound and allow discreet movement. And this setup had a disturbing purpose. It wasn't random cruelty. It was organized and planned. The emperor developed an obsession with young boys who could stay underwater for long stretches. His court began seeking out children who met very specific requirements. Agents were sent to coastal towns. While pretending to conduct official duties, they watched young swimmers, especially boys aged 8 to 14 who showed endurance and grace in the water. Those identified were put on lists and sent to the emperor's island. The process followed a pattern. Soldiers arrived without notice, using imperial orders to take boys into service. Families who resisted were punished harshly. Those who cooperated were given small payments, never enough to justify what they lost. Your own capture went the same way. Soldiers boarded your father's boat, talking of opportunity and imperial duty, but their tone made you uneasy. They looked at you closely, checking your movements, your teeth, your reactions. When you dove and retrieved a coin from deep below, staying under for nearly 3 minutes, they exchanged glances, and you knew you had been chosen. The trip to Capri took 2 days. The ship's hold was full of boys like you, scared and confused. Some cried, some sat in silence. Older boys whispered warnings about strange jobs and the rules of the island. They spoke of 2 outcomes, pleasing the emperor and surviving, or disappointing him and vanishing. Capri itself was beautiful from a distance, but as your ship came closer, the beauty faded into fear. Guarded docks, stone towers watching every move. No boats except Roman ones. Workers moving with care, as if always under watch. Once ashore, you went through another round of inspections. Doctors measured your swimming, your flexibility, your breath control. Those who passed were sent on. The others were never seen again. You were taken to a dormitory near the pool complex. The rooms were elegant, marble beds, painted walls showing sea creatures and mythic gods, but nothing could mask what the place really was. That night, as you lay in bed, you heard quiet splashes and whispered warnings from older boys. You learned to stay silent, to never ask questions, and to avoid upsetting the emperor. Your survival now depended on how well you followed these rules. Training began right away. You were assigned to an older boy named Marcus, who had been on the island for years. He taught you the basics in hushed conversations. Don't speak unless told. Never make eye contact with the emperor. Never say no. Most importantly, keep your swimming sharp. It might save your life. The pools were more than just places to swim. They were designed for complete control. Some were connected underground, so boys could move from one to another unseen. Water temperature was carefully managed. Stone ledges were placed where the emperor could sit while the boys swam around him. Over time, training got more intense. You learned to stay underwater for up to 5 minutes. You practiced moving silently, never splashing. But then the instructions turned darker. You were told how to behave underwater in ways no child should learn. Trained to perform tasks you didn't understand. Little by little, you were changed. Your sense of self erased. The first time you were called to serve, the fear nearly overwhelmed you. Tiberius reclined on a marble platform above the pool. He watched closely, silent, calculating. Boys selected for him stood nearby, waiting to be summoned. What came next would mark you forever. Marcus had done his best to prepare you. Quiet talks at night, advice shared in whispers, but nothing could ready you for the moment you stood in front of the emperor himself. Tiberius didn't raise his voice or issue commands like a tyrant. He spoke gently, almost like a kindly old man, calmly explaining what he expected from his little fishes. Your task was to swim around him in specific patterns. Dive, surface, repeat, while he relaxed in the water. Sometimes he gave more personal instructions. You didn't understand them fully, but you knew better than to question or disobey. Piece by piece, your sense of childhood was stripped away in those pools breath by breath. Everything was done in a way that seemed planned, carefully designed to confuse, exhaust, and control. Rewards were given to those who cooperated. Better meals, warmer clothes, even words of praise that felt like gold in such a cold place. But if you hesitated or showed fear, the punishments came quickly. They weren't violent. They didn't need to be. Being left alone in a dark chamber, with only dripping water for company, was enough to break even the strongest boys. What made the whole experience harder to grasp was how normal everything appeared on the surface. You had lessons in reading and writing. You were taught skills that might have seemed useful anywhere else. Even the emperor joined in sometimes, giving lectures with sharp wit and surprising intelligence. That contrast, the way cruelty lived alongside culture, only made things more disturbing. Over time, you saw the full spectrum of boys who had passed through Capri's gates. The newest ones arrived full of fear and confusion, mirroring how you once felt. Older boys like Marcus had learned how to survive, trading emotion for strategy. And then there were the ones who had been there too long, boys who moved through the halls like ghosts, silent and disconnected. Lucius was one of them. By the time you met him, he barely spoke, staring at nothing in particular. One day, he simply stopped eating. Everyone understood what that meant. For some, giving up was the only way out. As more months passed, the truth of where you were became harder to ignore. This villa wasn't just a private home or a royal hideaway. It was a system, a machine, designed to process young boys and shape them for a purpose they never chose. The guards, the doctors, the record keepers, they all played a role. Everything was organized. Even your body was tracked. How you grew, how long you could hold your breath, how well you performed. You weren't a person in their eyes. You were part of the catalog, a number in a ledger, something to be managed, not understood. There were patterns to the seasons. In summer, the sea was calm and more ships arrived. New boys replaced the ones who had vanished. Beds were never empty for long. In winter, there were fewer new arrivals, but the emperor stayed inside more, which meant longer sessions. You adjusted your behavior constantly, watching for changes in his mood, tried to stay useful, never stepping out of line. You lived in constant alert, your nerves always tight. When Tiberius felt well, the sessions might be calm. He'd ask for displays of swimming and let things stay simple. But when news from Rome was bad or his health worsened, his demands grew more intense. And as he aged into his 70s, his body slowed down, but his desires didn't. That gap led to longer, more difficult routines, pushing you and the others past your limits. The strange thing was how ordinary it all started to feel. The staff referred to their tasks with polite words: duties, recreation, training. The boys created their own rules, their own hierarchy. Survival became a strategy. For some, that meant doing what was expected without question. For others, it meant shutting down completely, letting their minds drift somewhere else. By your third year, you'd seen it all. Hopeful new faces turning hollow, friends disappearing. Some boys adapted so well they even seemed proud of what they'd become. Others couldn't bear it and found quiet ways to let go. You learned to stop reacting. You had to. Tiberius, meanwhile, was declining fast. He was sick more often, suffering from skin infections and trouble breathing. These issues didn't reduce his demands. They made them worse. He became more unpredictable, more intense. You couldn't count on anything anymore. Then Marcus, your guide through it all, reached his limit. After 5 years of enduring everything Capri had to offer, he was pushed into a session so extreme it broke something in him. That night, he vanished. The next morning, you learned he had jumped from the cliffs. His death shook you. It made something clear: just surviving wasn't enough. If it meant losing your soul, what was the point? The boy who once swam freely in the Bay of Naples was long gone. What remained was someone molded by fear, trained to obey, stripped of innocence. And the only question left was whether you would ever reclaim the part of yourself that had been taken. After Tiberius died in 37 A.D., possibly at the hands of his own guards, the villa was closed off. Officials sealed the grounds, and no one spoke of what had happened there. Some of the surviving boys were quietly sent to other places. Others disappeared altogether. Few, if any, ever returned to normal life. After so many years in isolation, they were unrecognizable to their families, to the world, even to themselves. Your story, like so many others, faded into silence. Ancient historians document what they could, enough to confirm the truth, but the details of individual lives were lost. You were never named, never remembered, yet your suffering was real. The fear was real, the damage permanent. Today, visitors still walk through the ruins of the villa. They marvel at the design, the marble pools, the architecture, but the water holds memories that don't make the guidebooks. Memories of boys who were never meant to be forgotten. In the end, Tiberius is remembered not just for the power he held, but for what he did with it, and what he destroyed along the way. The island of Capri, once a place of beauty, became something else entirely, and the children who swam in those pools left behind a legacy no emperor could erase.